Samsung's listened to all of our feedback over the years, and they've given us the biggest upgrade the Fold line has ever received, with the Z Fold 7. In fact, this upgrade is so big that it reminds me of the jump we got from the Fold 1 to the Fold 2. And with these upgrades in mind, Samsung is finally competitive against all the Chinese foldables that have really improved massively over the past few years. But okay, what's actually changed? Well, there are 7 big things that have changed and 3 things that haven't, all of which I've learned during my pre-event briefing with Samsung. Also, if you're looking to pre-order a Z Fold 7, you can use the link below to get the 512GB version for the price of the 256, plus $50 in Samsung credit, plus up to $1,150 in savings, plus a chance to win $5,000. It supports the channel while helping you save a ton of money on the Z Fold 7 or even the Z Flip 7. Okay, so let's start off with what has changed. The first and most important thing being the thickness. Samsung's foldables have always been on the thick side, which was to be expected with the initial models. However, ever since the Honor Magic V2 launch, which was the first foldable to feature a silicon carbon battery, Chinese foldables started getting ultra thin, and Samsung really fell behind. The Oppo Find N5, the world's thinnest foldable up until recently, was just 4.2mm when unfolded, compared to the Z Fold 6's 5.6mm, and just 8.93mm when folded, compared to 12.1. So a massive difference that just made me stop using my Z Fold 6. Well, the Fold 7 massively improves on this, dropping to just 4.2mm when unfolded and 8.9 when unfolded. That's the same thickness as the Oppo Find N5. Well, technically even thinner when folded by 0.02mm. Now, it won't be the world's thinnest foldable, as that would actually be the upcoming Honor Magic V5, which is 4.1mm unfolded and 8.8 folded. But it is a massive jump from the Fold 6 by being 26% thinner, and also a whopping 48% thinner when you compare it against the original Fold. Like, just holding this in my hand feels unreal. It feels just how a foldable should feel like. You know, like a regular phone in your pocket. Oh, and fun fact, at 8.9mm, the Fold 7 is now thinner than the new Nothing Phone 3 at 9mm. But I guess what's even more impressive is its weight, the second big change. You see, the Fold 7 is now a whopping 24 grams lighter than the Fold 6, at just 215 grams, which not only makes it the world's lightest foldable, even lighter than the upcoming Honor Magic V5, but it is also 3 grams lighter than the S25 Ultra, while of course having a gigantic inner screen. Speaking of which, this new inner screen is now 8 inches in size from the previous 7.6, which makes it so much better for viewing content. Although we do lose that under the display front camera for that full screen experience of the Z Fold 6, and instead we get the usual punch hole cutout that pretty much all the other Chinese manufacturers are using. Now, I do think that's a downgrade. Samsung said that they made this change because they wanted to give people a better front camera when the display was open. That previous 4-megapixel under-display camera was really bad. It was only ever meant for video calls. However, people were apparently still using it for selfies anyways, reason why Samsung decided to go back to a more traditional inner front camera. But other than that, this display is incredible. Same brightness as before at 2600 nits, same 120Hz refresh rate, is just great. And they've also managed to reduce the crease, almost as much as in that prototype that I saw at MWC. And on top of this, they've also improved the durability of that inner screen, now having a 50% thicker, ultra-thin glass. However, the big upgrade for me is that outer screen. But before that, a quick shout out to our sponsor, UGREEN, with their latest Nexo retractable series of charging devices. They keep your space clutter-free, thanks to these built-in cables that make charging devices at home or on the go faster, easier, and tidier. This UGREEN Nexo 165-watt, 20,000 mAh power bank is perfect for any trip. Whether I'm gaming, working, or just on the go, it can charge everything at once without overheating. Then, UGREEN's compact Nexo 65-watt charger is great for packing light and fast charging my MacBook and my phones anywhere. So check out UGREEN's Nexode Retractable series on the UGREEN website or on Amazon by using the links below. Now back to that outer screen. Samsung has always had this super narrow aspect ratio on their cover screen, which made typing very awkward and uncomfortable compared to all the other foldables out there that had cover screens that resembled a regular smartphone. And sure, Samsung has made that cover screen wider over time, but it was never really enough. Well, now the Z Fold 7 has a much more normal cover screen, with a larger 6.5-inch size from the 6.3, and the aspect ratio is also much wider as well, 21:9 as opposed to 22.1:9. However, when compared to the S25 Ultra, that one is still wider and bigger. But hey, at least it will now be much closer to other foldables on the market, so typing on the Z Fold 7 does indeed feel noticeably better and way more similar to a regular phone. So yeah, I'm massively happy with this change. Speaking of changes, the fifth one is the cameras. Just like we saw in the leaks, the Fold 7 does indeed get that same main 200 megapixel sensor as the S25 Ultra. In fact, the way they've managed to get that massive module to fit in here is by making the camera module itself 18% slimmer, although the sensor is still the same size. So I'm really happy to see that we'll get the same main module quality as on the S25 Ultra. Now, the telephoto is still the same 10 megapixel sensor with 3x optical zoom like before, which is actually quite poor by today's foldable standards. However, the ultrawide has actually been upgraded despite the leaks pointing to no upgrades at all. It's still the same 12 megapixel resolution, but the sensor itself is now larger for 50% more light intake, which is very significant. And it also supports macro, which is a first in any Samsung foldable. And on top of this, the front camera also got its own upgrade. It is now a new sensor with a 100-degree field of view from the previous 85. Oh, and both the outer and the inner display front cameras are exactly the same, by the way. So aside from that 3x 10 megapixel telephoto, literally every camera got an upgrade, which I'm extremely happy to see. Do hit that like button, by the way, if you do want to see a camera comparison against the Z Fold 6. And do hit that wallpapers download button in the Play Store or App Store if you're looking for literally the best wallpapers you can find on the market. I'm not even kidding. We've got a stunning 1:1 8K resolution made by our designers that you can use on any device that you've got, with over 200 8K wallpapers available for free without any ads. Now, the sixth change from the Z Fold 6 is the chip, now being the Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy from the previous 8 Gen 3, which means that the Z Fold 7 should now be the most powerful foldable on the market as of today, since the 4 Galaxy version of the 8 Elite is actually overclocked. And based on our previous benchmarks, it does indeed have a considerably higher multi-core performance. And the final thing that's changed is the software, with the Galaxy Z Fold 7 being the first Samsung phone, alongside the Flip 7 and the Flip 7 FE, to come with Samsung's latest One UI 8 software. With this, we also get a bunch of new Galaxy AI features, like dragging and dropping AI-generated images straight into another app if you've got both open side by side. Then Audio Razor will now work during video playback, video calls, basically any app that has audio, you'll be able to use Audio Razor in. Oh, and you'll also be able to edit images on one half of the screen and then see the results on the other half. Yeah, really cool stuff. Unfortunately, I don't have any footage to show you for this, but hopefully you guys get the idea. So now let's talk about what hasn't changed. And there are 3 things here. First, the battery. To my surprise, despite the Fold 7 being significantly thinner than the Fold 6, all of that thickness and weight reduction doesn't actually come from a thinner silicon carbon battery. In fact, the battery is the same lithium ion as before at 4,400 mAh. However, everything else around it got significantly thinner. For example, Samsung's now using an ultra-thin motherboard that is considerably thinner. And even when it comes to water resistance, they've removed the previous rubber seals around the phone, and instead, they've now coated all of the internal components with a water-resistant resin. Of course, this is way more expensive to do. However, this is what allows the phone to be incredibly thin without changing the battery. But still, I am definitely disappointed that we did not get a silicon carbon battery here, like the Honor Magic V5 that has a considerably larger 5,820 mAh battery, whereas the Z Fold 7 still has that 4,400. As to why we don't have silicon carbon, well, I did ask Samsung, but unfortunately I did not get a clear answer. My guess is that they still cannot source enough silicon carbon batteries for the volumes that Samsung ships, as opposed to other manufacturers. Although, I would love to hear what you guys think the reason why Samsung, as well as Apple and also Google, none of them use silicon carbon, whereas all the Chinese manufacturers are. Still, I'm glad that Samsung managed to shrink down everything else considerably and still give us an incredibly thin foldable. One that is finally as thin as its Chinese competitors. Which makes me think that when we do get silicon carbon, maybe with the Fold 8, we could actually see the largest battery ever in a foldable, since Samsung has already laid down the groundworks with their internal space reduction. Now, aside from the battery, the second thing that isn't changing is the charging speeds. We still get the same 25 watts charging to 50% in 30 minutes, the same 15 watts of wireless charging, and the same 4.5 watts of wireless power share, far below other manufacturers like Honor, which offer 66 watts wired charging and 50 watts wireless on the Magic V5. But luckily, the price isn't changing either. At least here in the UK, the Fold 7 costs $17.99, same as the Z Fold 6. And if you use our link below, you'll get a 512GB version for the price of the 256, as well as $50 in Samsung credit, up to $1,150 in extra savings, and also a chance to win $5,000, all while supporting the channel without costing you anything. We will have way more Fold 7 content coming, so do subscribe for that, as well as for some Flip 7 content coming as well. I'm Daniel, this is ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.